I'm Mr. Beat, and this X right behind me marks the spot. I'm here at Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas, at the very spot where history forever changed. It was here on November 22nd, 1963, that President John F. Kennedy and his motorcade were making their way through when shots rang out.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. You'll excuse the fact that I'm out of breath, but about 10 or 15 minutes ago, a tragic thing, from all indications at this point, has happened in the city of Dallas. Let me quote to you this, and you'll excuse me if I am out of breath. President Kennedy and Governor John Connally have been cut down by assassins' bullets in downtown Dallas. They were riding in an open automobile when the shots were fired. The president, his limp body carried in the arms of his wife Jacqueline, has rushed to Parkland Hospital.
I have just talked to Father Oscar Hubert of the Holy Trinity Catholic Church. He and another priest tell me that the pair of men have just administered the last rites of the Catholic Church to President Kennedy. President Kennedy has been assassinated. It's official now. The president is dead. Women here in shock, some have fainted. Grown men, Secret Service men standing by the emergency room, tears streaming down their face. There's only one word to describe the picture here, and that's grief, and much of it. It's official. As of just a few moments ago, the President of the United States is dead.
This video is once again sponsored in part by Home Title Lock. If you own a home, you may not even know that your home's title and mortgage information is stored and available online. Unfortunately, thieves use this information to transfer you off your home's title to take out massive loans using your home's equity. One poor lady in Atlanta came home to find a bulldozer tearing down her house. As it turns out, a thief had taken her off her home title and ordered the house to be torn down without her even knowing it. The good news is there are my friends over at Home Title Lock to prevent this crap from ever happening to you. Home Title Lock monitors your title 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and alerts you if any changes are made to your title. Most importantly, if fraud does happen, their team of restoration experts work to ensure that your title is returned to its rightful owner. Go to HometitleLock.com/beat and enter the code BEAT to get 10% off your Home Title Lock subscription and a free comprehensive report to see if you're already a victim. I'm Mr. Beat, and this X right behind me marks the spot exactly where the 35th President of the United States was assassinated. He took a bullet to the head. This is indisputable. It's a busy street right now. By the way, I was going to film on the actual spot where it happened, but yeah, that would have been way too dangerous. The assassination of John F. Kennedy remains one of the most tragic and shocking events in American history, but often it's remembered for its mystery, for there is still, 60 years later, much we don't know about it. Here is what we know. Well, kind of. On the morning of November 22nd, 1963, President Kennedy, also often known by his initials, JFK, spoke at a breakfast in Fort Worth, Texas. After a very short flight aboard an official aircraft of the president, known simply as Air Force One, he and his wife, Jacqueline, joined Texas Governor John Connally and his wife, Nellie, on a presidential motorcade that was to go through downtown Dallas before arriving at the Trade Mart to give another speech. In other cars in the motorcade, a bunch of people there literally to protect the president, mostly members of the Secret Service, but also members of local police forces. The motorcade began at Love Field and made its way downtown, progressing down Main Street. Folks lined the street, cheering the president on. The motorcade even stopped a couple times so that President Kennedy could shake hands with fans. At approximately 12:29 p.m. Central Standard Time, the motorcade turned right off Main Street onto Houston Street, entering Dealey Plaza. The motorcade then took a sharp left turn here onto Elm Street, right behind me, And also right behind me is the Texas School Book Depository building. And on the 6th floor up there, right about there in that window, waiting with a 6.5 millimeter Carcano rifle, was Lee Harvey Oswald. Soon after the president's car turned south onto Elm Street, Lee Harvey Oswald shot Kennedy. One bullet entered the president's back and exited through his throat. Another entered his head. Jacqueline, right next to him, screamed and climbed onto the rear of the limo. She was not struck by a bullet, but Governor Connolly was. A bullet entered his upper back and his thigh. Most believe one bullet actually did much of the damage to both Connolly and JFK. But more on that later.
My eyes were open, I was conscious, and I saw the blue velour interior of this presidential limousine covered with blood and brain tissue. And I knew that the president had been fatally hit. I knew it was the president because Ms. Kennedy said, she just screamed, "My God, I've got his brains in my hand."
The limousine rushed them to Parkland Hospital for emergency treatment. Connolly survived, but it was there that doctors pronounced Kennedy dead about 30 minutes later. He was just 46 years old. Meanwhile, as early as 3 minutes after the shooting, the Dallas police completely sealed off the Texas School Book Depository building so that no one could get in nor out. But by that time, Lee Harvey Oswald had quickly left the building, walking 7 blocks before boarding a bus. After the bus got stuck in traffic, he got off and got a taxi. He had the taxi driver stop several blocks past his rooming house at 1026 North Beckley Avenue. It's a busy street, and it's still there today. It's a museum today, actually. Oh, we went inside all right.
He chose to stay in this room. If he was really an antisocial loner persona, he would have taken the other room. Now, this is the wardrobe closet that he actually used. So we think he had the gun hidden in one of these drawers.
Anyway, he then came back to his room here, was here no longer than 2 to 3 minutes, and grabbed his jacket and handgun before then heading out. Wow, this room is tiny. 6 feet by 15 feet. That's it. At around 1:15, Oswald came across Dallas police officer J.D. Tippett at this intersection at 10th and Patton. By this time, Tippett had got a radio order to drive to this area to look for the man witnesses described as shooting President Kennedy. It was here that Officer Tippett saw Oswald, and he looked at him and he was like, "That kind of looks like that dude they're describing on the radio." According to several witnesses, Oswald walked over to Tippett's car and had a conversation with him. And then, after Tippett got out of the car, Oswald got out his handgun and shot Tippett 5 times. Three of those shots hit him in the chest, and he died just a few minutes later. Oswald, once again, immediately fled the scene on foot. He began to panic when he heard police sirens, and he ducked into this store until those police sirens faded. In 1963, this was actually a shoe store, and the shoe store owner was suspicious of him, and he followed him to here, the Texas Theater. After Oswald snuck into the theater without paying, the shoe store owner told the ticket attendant, who then notified the police at approximately 1:40. Oswald just hid out in here for about 10 minutes watching the movie War is Hell before about 24 police officers, including sheriffs and detectives, all showed up at once and burst in. Oh, perfect timing. Police soon spotted Oswald sitting in the theater and arrested him, but only after he punched and tried to shoot one of the officers. Reportedly, as he saw the officers approach him, Oswald yelled out, "Well, It's all over now.
Well, it's all over now.
I can't see how anyone could think of doing such a thing.
By this time, the country was stunned by the news of the death of their president. They were especially stunned by just how seemingly random, how crazy it was. I mean, holy crap. It happened out in broad daylight in front of hundreds of people. And the way it happened, so violent. So violent that I can't even show you the footage. Yes, there is actual footage of it. Quite famous footage of it, actually. The most famous footage of the assassination wasn't even released to the public until 11 and a half years later. Known simply as the Zapruder film, it's named after the dude who filmed it, Abraham Zapruder. It's the most complete footage we have of the event and is one of the most scrutinized pieces of film in history. Meanwhile, Jacqueline Kennedy and President Kennedy's body had returned to Air Force One. At 2:38, Vice President Lyndon Johnson, who had been riding in a car behind President Kennedy with his wife, Lady Bird, at the time of the assassination, took the oath of office. 27 people surrounded him on the small plane as he was sworn in as the 36th President of the United States. What a photo that is. Man, history is crazy. That night, Oswald was charged with the murder of both President Kennedy and Officer Tippit. Also that night, 2 doctors did an autopsy of President Kennedy's body. Most historians agree that the autopsy was, not done well. The doctors were rushed and not qualified. In fact, the clumsy autopsy would later fuel conspiracy theories about the JFK assassination. Oh, a conspiracy theory is a hypothesis, really, that makes the claim that a secret group of people is plotting really bad stuff. Conspiracy theories, unfortunately, often get a bad rap. Mostly because conspiracy theories tend to not be backed up by very good evidence, and yeah, a lot of them are really wacky. On the morning of Sunday, November 24th, Dallas police escorted Oswald to a car in the basement of their headquarters. They had planned on taking him to the county jail. At approximately 11:21, a local nightclub owner and JFK fanboy named Jack Ruby walked right up to Oswald and shot him at point blank range. And yes, that's holy dang. Yeah, I still can't get over that. That's a real photograph. Nonfiction is way more interesting than fiction. Just saying. Oswald was rushed to the same hospital as President Kennedy and Governor Connally, Parkland Hospital, where he died shortly after arrival. A jury later found Ruby guilty of murder, go figure, and sentenced him to death. However, Ruby got his conviction appealed before dying himself of a cancer-related ailment on January 3rd, 1967. Meanwhile, Kennedy's body had been brought back to Washington, D.C. Around 1,200 people, including guests from at least 90 different countries, attended his funeral service at St. Matthew's Cathedral. 4 days later, President Johnson called for an investigation into the assassination, putting together a team today simply known as the Warren Commission, named after the lead dude of it, Supreme Court Justice Earl Warren. The team notably also included future President Gerald Ford. The Warren Commission presented its conclusions to President Johnson on September 24th, 1964. That 888-page report, which I'm sure all of you have already read in its entirety, concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald, and Lee Harvey Oswald alone, killed Kennedy and wounded Connally. So that's it. That's the story of the JFK assassination. Wait a second, there appears to be a second storyteller here at the grassy knoll.
You really gonna end the video already?
Well, it's Evan from the channel Necessary Information. What are you doing here? I love your stuff, by the way.
Thanks, Mr. Beat. Appreciate it. Well, it's the grassy knoll. I typically just hang out here. Other than the black site, this is where I get most of my filming done.
That makes sense. Yeah. So you said there's more to the story. What's that about?
Oh, there's quite a bit more to the story, Mr. Beat.
Oh, you mean the conspiracy stuff.
Obviously. You mind if I take over for a bit?
Oh, that's fine. I can maybe just go to the bathroom behind that bush over there. Maybe try to find JFK Jr.
I think he's in that general direction.
All right, yeah. Go. Thanks.
Appreciate it. Is he gone? Is he gone? The CIA killed John F. Kennedy. I'm Evan from Necessary Information, home of the most mid-history and CIA-based content on the internet. And let me be clear, okay, I am in no way a historian, an expert, a legal citizen of the United States. Hell, I can barely read, and last week I accidentally ate an entire completed Lego Millennium Falcon. But what I am, ladies and gentlemen, is ready and willing to make a fool of myself on a much larger YouTube channel for your amusement and yummy internet clout. Yes, tasty clout. Tasty clout, so good. And something else I am is completely convinced that the CIA whacked John F. Kennedy harder than Chris Rock at the Oscars. Probably. Maybe. I'm not too sure, honestly. Like I said, I'm still waiting for Han and Chewie to pass through my small intestine, so I've clearly had some lapses of judgment in the past, but hear me out on this, okay? Before we talk about the how, let's talk about the why. Why exactly would the Central Intelligence Agency want to get rid of Kennedy in the first place? Well, to many conspiracy theory enthusiasts, such as myself, the answer has everything to do with the Bay of Pigs invasion, Vietnam, and an internal power struggle between the president and the CIA-centered deep state. Plus a healthy dose of lead poisoning and the fact that CIA agents were legitimately, I'm not kidding, secretly dosing each other with LSD for pretty much that entire decade, but we don't have time to get into that. To put it very briefly, the Bay of Pigs invasion was an absolute garbage fire show of an operation organized by the CIA with the goal of a covert invasion of communist Cuba in 1961. The plan was to train a bunch of Cubans who had been exiled by Cuba's communist dictator Fidel Castro and send them as an invasion force along with paratroopers and a bombing campaign utilizing World War II B-26 bombers painted to look like Cuban Air Force planes. When the Cuban exiles did invade, however, things did not go well for them, to say the least, and the CIA and its director Alan Dulles urged Kennedy to authorize air support to make sure that the invasion was a success. Now, Kennedy did not want to involve the US military and US citizens and refused to authorize the air support, and the invasion force was quickly captured by Castro's forces. The CIA, who had been cooking up this plot since before Kennedy even came into office with the previous President Eisenhower, were not particularly stoked about this. It was not their best day. So the theory goes that the CIA and its director Alan Dulles blamed Kennedy pretty much solely for the invasion's failure by not authorizing that air support, even though their plan was kind of already hot poo-poo garbage and actually relied on the citizens of Cuba to join the invasion forces on their own free will for the plan to even succeed. It's a long story. Kennedy, on the other hand, was allegedly furious at the CIA and Alan Dulles for what he considered to be basically tricking him into authorizing a plan that was doomed for failure, making him look terrible, and treating him, the most powerful man on the planet, as the CIA's own personal meat puppet, and promptly fired Alan Dulles and his cronies. Kennedy also told a high official in his administration that he wanted to, quote, splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds, according to a 1966 edition of the New York Times, and he had a plan to cut the CIA's funding by 20%, a plan that he never got to carry out on account of his, being assassinated before he could do so. Just saying. And then there was Vietnam. To put it even more briefly, in the 50s, Vietnam was separated into the communist North Vietnam and an American-aligned military government in the South. And for context, if there's one thing the CIA hates more than anything else on God's green earth, it is dirty, distribution-happy communists, okay? They hate communists so much, it's not even funny. It's like their whole shtick. So during the Eisenhower administration, the US started aiding South Vietnam's battle against the communist North. However, on October 2nd, 1963, Kennedy made the decision to remove the first contingent of US military forces in Vietnam, a move that many saw as the first step to fully removing US support for the battle in Vietnam and against the CIA's mortal enemy, dirty, stinky, conniving commies. And then, a month later, Kennedy got a little bit shot in the back of the head. Just saying. And then, a mere 4 days after Kennedy's death, his presidential successor, Lyndon B. Johnson, supported intensified planning for covert action against North Vietnam, supported by, oh wow, look at that, the CIA. So, with the combination of Kennedy's perceived responsibility for the failure at the Bay of Pigs, his decision to pull out of Vietnam, and a worry that he may try to reconcile with communist Cuba, making the CIA view him as, quote, soft on communism, his threat to cut the agency's funding by 20%, and the threat of being, quote, splintered into 1,000 pieces and scattered to the winds, I hope you can see now why the CIA, we're not huge fans of this guy. So, that's the why. And as for the how, that involves, well, the CIA, obviously, and a cabal of pissed-off Cuban exiles, the mob, organized crime, and most importantly, a second shooter. Right there behind the grassy knoll. But wow, would you look at that? I don't have time for the how. I've never been one for brevity. So, for the sake of Mr. Beat's good name and his viewer retention, I'm gonna go ahead and cut it off here. I guess you'll just have to go check out my channel, Necessary Information, to learn more about how the CIA or dirty, naughty no-no bad boys deserve a spanking, honestly, and a firm one at that. Right after you finish this video, hit the like button, subscribe to Mr. Beat, and leave like 7 comments to drive up his engagement, of course, or else. Back to you, Beatmeister. Oh, would you look at that? Here he is now.
I found him! I found him!
Oh.
Yeah, come on, let's go! Let's go! Some think the Mafia organized JFK's assassination, and that even Jack Ruby, who indeed had ties to the Mafia, worked for the Mafia to shut Oswald up. Others think it was the Cubans. Some even think Lyndon Johnson orchestrated the whole thing so that he could be president. Some think Oswald couldn't have fired those 3 shots so quickly. That wasn't enough time. That he didn't even do it to begin with because, well, he had no motive to. That maybe a Secret Service agent did from one of those other limos. Or some dude in a sewer. Others say lead witnesses died mysteriously. Most who think that there was a conspiracy, however, think the CIA or FBI, or both, were involved. Those who promote a conspiracy theory generally argue that there were multiple shooters. At least 2, with the second being right about here. Notably, when watching the graphic Zapruder footage, which I can't show you in this video because it will get age restricted, but I'll link it in the description, show JFK going
back and to the left.
But the Warren Commission insisted that experts said a bullet entering from the back could absolutely make Kennedy's body go
back and to the left.
Critics of the single bullet theory mockingly call it the magic bullet theory, insisting that the way he moved defies physics if shot from behind. However, nearly all conspiracy theories about the JFK assassination miss the mark. That probably wasn't the best idiom to use, probably not the most tasteful thing to say. Let me try that again. However, nearly all conspiracy theories about the JFK assassination fail to hit the target. That was an even worse idiom to use. What the heck is wrong with me? There has never been any physical evidence that proved any of these theories could be true. Well, other than the theory that there was a second shooter at the grassy knoll. A lot of people don't know that in 1976, the United States House of Representatives created a committee called the House Select Committee on Assassinations to complete a new investigation into the JFK assassination, as well as the Martin Luther King Jr. assassination, which happened in 1968. What they concluded was that Kennedy was indeed, quote, probably killed as a result of some sort of conspiracy, and that Oswald likely didn't act alone. I bring this up because the physical evidence that helped them reach this conclusion was a recording from a police officer near Kennedy when he was shot. Acoustics experts analyzed the recording and determined that there was a 50% chance a sound representing a gunshot came from the grassy knoll. That said, later experts have said the recording is not evidence of a second shooter, with many saying the recording actually took place nowhere near Kennedy nor during when the shooting took place. I should also add that an overwhelming number of scientists have concluded that one bullet making Kennedy's body move
back and to the left. Back and to the left.
Despite coming from behind, is indeed plausible. Despite hardly any physical evidence existing of there being a conspiracy, today most Americans continue to believe that a conspiracy was indeed behind JFK's death. One person who definitely believes a conspiracy was behind it is Patricia Puckett Hall. Her grandma was Gladys Johnson, Oswald's landlord. Today, Patricia owns the house, and she was the one who gave us a private tour of Oswald's bedroom.
Now, I have to let you know, I do not believe Mr. Lee shot a single bullet.
You think it was someone else?
Oh, I know it was somebody else. My investigation has shown me that he most definitely was a CIA operative, not an agent. Operatives are considered expendable.
The thing is, Hall has good reason to believe the CIA was working with Oswald. In fact, we now know that the CIA and FBI lied about knowing who Lee Harvey Oswald was. As it turns out, they had been tracking him for a while before the assassination. And how do we know this? Journalists and historians have examined declassified records that got declassified, mostly due to the JFK Records Act, a law Congress passed back in 1992, in part in response to the success of the conspiracy-promoting Oliver Stone film JFK. There is also evidence that the CIA pressured the Warren Commission to conclude that Oswald acted alone and actively prevented them from getting information about Oswald that would link him to the CIA. Indeed, the Warren Commission ignored key witnesses and gave a lot of attention to less important witnesses. It seemed to focus only on evidence that backed up its single bullet theory and Oswald acting alone. Not only that, as I mentioned earlier, the first autopsy was messed up. Plus, look at the people who likely were just fine with Kennedy being dead, as mentioned earlier by Evan. It's not surprising why many Americans continue to distrust the official version of events. I mean, come on. And it shouldn't be surprising why many Americans think there was a second shooter at the grassy knoll. So, wait, was there a second shooter at the grassy knoll? First, let's get one thing out of the way. Lee Harvey Oswald absolutely murdered the president. The evidence is overwhelming. The facts are pretty conclusive and almost indisputable at this point. But regarding a second shooter, there just isn't that good of evidence of that. It doesn't mean there wasn't, but it's not likely. And, well, we'll probably never know, will we? Now, this is just my opinion, but based on all of the publicly available documents by the FBI and CIA that we have, and also kind of based on the fact that the FBI and CIA continue to suppress classified documents 60 years later, I think the claim that the FBI and CIA at least knew about Lee Harvey Oswald and was monitoring him before the assassination is mostly true. So there, that's something. Perhaps the federal government could have prevented the assassination of John F. Kennedy. These people don't even know. You just drove over it. You just drove over it. And you drove over it too. You all are driving over this historic spot right there where that X is. Don't you even know? You don't even know that you're driving over the spot right now. None of you know this. Get out of the way. Get out of the way. Hey, get out. We're trying to film a video here. Get out of here. Get out. Come on now. We're trying to film a video. You're blocking the house. Get out. Hey, you're making too much noise. You're making too much noise. Okay, but what do you think? What really went down here in Dealey Plaza in Dallas, Texas, in the United States of America on November 22nd, 1963? Let me know down below. And obviously, I left a lot out. But what do you expect? I make introduction videos, for crying out loud. So please, research yourself. There's a ton of information out there about the JFK assassination, including a lot of sources I used for this video. Check out those in the description of this video. I have links. There are some pretty good books I referenced. Also, a big shout out to Evan from the channel Necessary Information. He collaborated with me for this video, obviously, helped me out a lot, made this video a lot better, and it was just cool to hang out with him. Go check out his videos and subscribe to his channel. Viewer discretion is advised.